union says the Social Security numbers of up to 14 million government workers apparently were not encrypted when hackers stole them. But a spokesman for the Office of Personnel Management says encryption might not have stopped the breach. He adds OPM does utilize encryption in some instances and is currently increasing the types of methods utilized to encrypt data. Well, the White House said earlier this hour it's still investigating. Morgan Wright joins us. He is a cybersecurity analyst who says his information was in the system and is now likely in the hands of hackers. Really? Yours?
Yeah, Greg, right here. This is my SF-86. I had 32 pages of my entire life filled out for people, medical records. I had to sign releases for everything back in 2001, sitting there, not only in the hands of hackers, most likely, Greg, in the hands of the Chinese.
I would suspect you're a little bit angry about that. Talk to us about what you think is perhaps incompetence on the part of the government?
That would be the kindest word I could say right now. Look, we have had since 2002 an act called the Federal Information Security Management Act, FISMA. We have spent hundreds of billions of dollars, and you're telling me after all of this time you can't even encrypt all of my data? Look, at this point, heads need to roll. People need to be held accountable. People need to be fired just the same. If this had happened in the private sector, and it has, after Target, the CEO and CIO were both let go. They were gone. Where is the accountability? Until you get that, Greg, you will not make a change in how we address cybersecurity in our nation.
I mean, how can you not encrypt in this day and age such vital information for millions of people, many of whom, you know, have access to all kinds of things? I mean, they could be the subject of extortion and blackmail, not to mention theft and so forth.
Look, when I went through my security clearance, I signed my non-disclosure agreement. They told you about the things that the reason they want you to be truthful on this. It tell us everything so you can't be blackmailed on it later. That doesn't always work. People aren't always truthful. They're not always polygraphed. My biggest concern, Greg, is the fact is that it can expose people who are involved in sensitive operations, sensitive investigations, to ongoing danger, to peril. But the biggest thing, Greg, it's just not this. It's not just OPM. The Interior Business Center hosted data center for over 150 different agencies and organizations. If people think this is just about OPM, this is just the tip of the iceberg. It is going to get worse, far worse, before this thing gets better and before we get to the bottom of it.
Well, and the thing, Morgan, is these hackers, from what I've been reading, were actually into the system for the better part of a year. I mean, they were hanging out in the system, you know, for a year. And correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't DHS spend about $500 million on a system that apparently didn't even detect that year-long breach?
Well, if you consider 12 months real-time intrusion protection, you know, I guess it worked for the government. Yesterday's technology, tomorrow. They said, don't worry, that was Einstein 2. They're now talking about, oh, new and improved, Einstein 3 Advanced. Somehow rebranding under new management is going to solve our problem. The problem isn't going to, you can throw another billion, you know, $500 million at this. It doesn't get solved until you replace the people that are currently in positions of power making policy. They have to go. We've got to do something different. That means maybe even getting the private sector involved, handling some of the cybersecurity, because look, for all the billions we spent, look, even George Steinbrenner put together world championship teams with enough money. These guys can't even get to that level at this point.
All right, so let's assume that heads are on the block. There'll be a congressional investigation, other investigations. You know what those people are going to say? They're going to throw the blame on Congress and the president, saying, you didn't give us enough money to undertake proper cybersecurity. Now, is that just plain nonsense?
That is absolute nonsense. I mean, you've got these folks work for the only place where you can print money, where you can authorize the creation of money to pay for this kind of stuff. It's not the amount of money. You can throw more money at it. It's not going to solve the problem. It's getting back to accountability. It's getting back to being more, you know, we've got the acquisition process is so broken. By the time you get and bid out stuff, it's 18 to 24 months behind. Our adversaries are fighting with today's weapons. We're still the colonial army fighting, you know, with musket loaders. We are outclassed and outmatched with cyber defense. We've got to change things.
Well, it's outrageous and pathetic, but in the context of the government, I realize that's redundant. Morgan Wright, thanks for being with us.
You bet, Greg.